Many English learners spend years studying grammar, vocabulary, and listening practice, but they still feel terrified when speaking. The problem is not intelligence. The problem is silence. People practice understanding English every day, but they almost never train themselves to speak naturally and confidently.
Exactly. Learners become comfortable listening quietly because listening feels safe. Speaking feels risky and emotional. Many people fear embarrassment more than failure itself. That fear slowly creates a habit of silence, and the longer someone avoids speaking, the more difficult conversations begin to feel emotionally.
I think schools also contribute to this problem sometimes. Students focus heavily on exams, grammar exercises, and memorization, but they rarely experience real conversations. Because of that, learners understand English academically, but struggle using it naturally during spontaneous situations with other people outside classrooms later.
That's true. And fluency cannot grow through silence alone. Speaking is a skill that requires repetition and emotional confidence. Learners must accept uncomfortable moments as part of progress. The more they practice speaking imperfectly, the more natural communication slowly becomes over time through consistent effort.
Fear changes the brain completely during conversations. Learners suddenly forget simple words they already know because anxiety blocks confidence and memory. Many people are not truly afraid of English itself. They are afraid of sounding foolish or making mistakes in front of other people.
Yes, and perfectionism makes this fear even stronger. Learners believe every sentence must sound perfect before speaking aloud. That pressure creates hesitation and overthinking. Instead of communicating naturally, they mentally check grammar rules constantly, which destroys confidence and prevents smooth, relaxed conversations from happening naturally.
I always tell learners that mistakes are normal and necessary. Native speakers make mistakes constantly, too. Real communication is messy and imperfect naturally. Fluency grows through practice, repetition, and courage, not through waiting silently until your English becomes completely perfect someday in the future. Exactly. Confidence only grows through action. The first conversations may feel uncomfortable or embarrassing, but avoiding speaking creates even bigger fear later. Learners must understand that temporary discomfort is part of improvement. Every difficult conversation teaches valuable lessons and slowly builds stronger communication skills over time. Many learners suddenly freeze during conversations, even when they know the vocabulary already. Their brain becomes overwhelmed by pressure, fear, and overthinking. Instead of focusing naturally on communication, they worry too much about grammar mistakes, pronunciation, and how other people might judge them negatively.
Exactly. Anxiety interrupts memory and concentration very quickly. Learners often know the answer internally, but panic blocks their ability to respond smoothly. That's why confidence matters so much in speaking. Relaxed learners communicate more naturally because their brain feels safe instead of emotionally threatened constantly.
I think overthinking is one of the biggest causes of mental freezing. Learners try building perfect sentences inside their head before speaking. While they are thinking deeply about grammar, the conversation continues moving forward, which creates even more stress and confusion emotionally during social interactions.
That's true, and the solution is consistent speaking practice. Learners should train themselves to respond quickly without obsessing over perfection. Small daily conversations help the brain become faster and calmer naturally. Fluency develops when communication feels normal instead of emotionally dangerous or stressful every single time.
Translation is one of the biggest hidden problems in language learning today. Many learners hear English, translate it mentally into their native language, create an answer, and then translate back into English again. That process is exhausting, stressful, and far too slow for real conversations.
Exactly. Real conversations move quickly, and translation creates hesitation immediately. Learners panic because they cannot answer fast enough naturally. Thinking directly in English is much more effective because it trains the brain to connect experiences, emotions, and words naturally without depending constantly on translation during communication.
I always recommend starting with simple thoughts first. Learners do not need advanced vocabulary immediately. Small sentences like, I'm tired, this food tastes amazing, or the weather feels beautiful today can slowly train the brain to think naturally in English during everyday situations consistently.
Yes, and consistency matters more than difficulty. Small daily thinking exercises slowly create automatic responses inside the brain. Over time, learners stop translating unconsciously because English begins feeling more natural emotionally. That transformation is one of the most important steps toward real fluency and confidence later.
Perfectionism destroys confidence for many English learners. People believe every sentence must sound grammatically perfect before speaking aloud. Because of that unrealistic pressure, learners become afraid of talking naturally. Instead of expressing ideas comfortably, they stay silent and mentally criticize themselves constantly during conversations.
That's completely true. Perfectionism creates emotional exhaustion because learners never feel satisfied with their speaking ability. Even when communication is successful, they focus only on mistakes. But real fluency is not about perfection. It is about communication, confidence, and expressing thoughts clearly, despite imperfections, naturally.
Native speakers make grammar mistakes constantly too, but they continue speaking confidently without fear. Learners often forget that communication is more important than flawless language. Waiting for perfect English before speaking is dangerous because confidence only develops through repeated conversations and uncomfortable learning experiences over time.
Exactly. Learners should allow themselves to sound imperfect sometimes. Mistakes are not proof of failure. Mistakes are proof that real learning is happening actively. The more learners practice speaking without fear, the more natural, relaxed, and confident their communication skills gradually become later in life.
Many people believe understanding English automatically means they should speak fluently too, but those are actually different skills completely. Listening is passive because the brain receives information quietly. Speaking is active because the brain must create sentences quickly while managing emotions and social pressure simultaneously.
Exactly, and that difference surprises many learners. Someone may understand movies, podcasts, and YouTube videos very well, but still struggle during conversations. Speaking requires fast thinking, confidence, pronunciation, and emotional comfort. Those abilities only improve through regular speaking practice and real human interaction over time, naturally.
I think many learners underestimate how important speaking practice truly is. They spend years consuming English content passively, but rarely produce English actively themselves. Because of that imbalance, their understanding becomes strong, while their speaking confidence and communication speed remain weak and underdeveloped emotionally for years underdeveloped.
That's why active practice matters so much. Learners should speak aloud daily, even when alone. Reading sentences, shadowing podcasts, recording voice messages, and having short conversations train the brain differently. Fluency grows faster when learners balance listening practice with active speaking exercises consistently every single day.
Many learners know hundreds of English words while studying alone, but suddenly forget everything during conversations. This happens because stress affects memory strongly. The brain becomes nervous under pressure, and simple vocabulary feels difficult to remember naturally when confidence disappears emotionally in social situations unexpectedly.
Exactly. Learners often blame themselves unfairly, but forgetting words during stressful moments is completely normal. The solution is repeated exposure and relaxed speaking practice. Vocabulary becomes stronger when people use words emotionally and naturally in conversations, instead of only memorizing isolated lists from textbooks every day.
I think context is also very important for memory.
When learners connect vocabulary to real experiences, emotions, or conversations, the brain remembers words more effectively. But memorizing random vocabulary lists without emotional connection usually creates weak memory and fast forgetting later during communication situations naturally. Yes, and daily repetition helps enormously too. Learners should use new words immediately after learning them. Speaking sentences aloud repeatedly creates stronger memory connections inside the brain. Over time, vocabulary becomes automatic and easier to access naturally during fast conversations, without stress or hesitation anymore later.
Confidence changes everything in communication. Some learners know advanced grammar, but still avoid speaking because they lack confidence emotionally. Meanwhile, other learners speak imperfect English confidently and communicate successfully. Confidence creates smoother conversations because relaxed learners focus on communication instead of obsessing over every possible mistake constantly.
Exactly. Fear and insecurity block fluency more than grammar problems sometimes. Learners often underestimate the emotional side of language learning completely. Speaking another language feels vulnerable because people fear judgment and embarrassment. Building confidence slowly through daily practice is absolutely necessary for long-term speaking improvement naturally over time.
I always encourage learners to celebrate small victories. Speaking confidently for 1 minute matters. Ordering coffee in English matters. Asking simple questions matters too. Confidence grows gradually through repeated successful experiences, not through waiting passively until fluency suddenly appears magically someday without effort or consistent communication practice.
That's true, and learners should stop comparing themselves constantly to fluent speakers online. Social media often shows polished final results instead of years of struggle behind fluency. Everyone begins somewhere. Real confidence develops through patience, repetition, self-belief, and consistent speaking experiences over long periods, naturally in life.
Thinking in English is one of the most powerful habits learners can develop for fluency. Instead of translating constantly, learners should create direct connections between English words and real experiences later.
Exactly. Many learners believe thinking in English requires advanced vocabulary immediately, but that's completely unnecessary. Simple daily thoughts are enough initially. Sentences like, "I'm hungry," "This music sounds relaxing," or "Today feels exhausting" slowly build natural thinking habits through consistent repetition over time, emotionally and mentally.
I think daily situations provide perfect opportunities for practice naturally. Learners can describe their surroundings, emotions, or actions internally throughout the day. These small exercises seem simple, but they gradually train the brain to stop depending heavily on translation during conversations and spontaneous communication situations later successfully.
Yes, and consistency matters more than difficulty again here. 5 minutes of daily thinking practice can create huge improvement over months. Eventually, learners notice something surprising. English thoughts begin appearing automatically without effort, and speaking feels faster, easier, and emotionally more comfortable during real conversations naturally afterward.
Many learners believe fluency requires expensive courses or complicated methods, but simple daily exercises can improve speaking dramatically. Reading aloud, shadowing podcasts, recording your voice, and speaking alone regularly help train pronunciation, confidence, and communication speed naturally over time through consistent repetition and active speaking practice daily.
Exactly. Speaking exercises work because fluency is a physical skill, not only mental knowledge. The mouth and brain must practice together repeatedly. Learners who actively speak every day improve much faster than learners who only study grammar or consume passive English content silently for hours continuously alone.
I also recommend practicing with realistic situations. Learners can pretend they are ordering food, introducing themselves, or answering interview questions. These exercises prepare the brain emotionally for real conversations later. Familiar situations create confidence because learners already practiced possible responses and communication patterns beforehand, repeatedly at home.
That's true, and learners should focus on consistency instead of perfection during exercises. Speaking imperfectly every day is much more effective than practicing perfectly once weekly. Small daily communication habits slowly strengthen fluency, confidence, pronunciation, and speaking speed naturally until English begins feeling more automatic and comfortable emotionally later.
Before we end today's episode, remember something important. Fluency is not about sounding perfect. It's about having the courage to speak, even when you feel nervous, afraid, or uncomfortable. Every mistake you make is bringing you closer to confidence, growth, and real communication, naturally, over time. Exactly. So stop waiting for the perfect moment to start speaking English confidently. That moment does not exist. Speak now. Make mistakes now. Grow now. And trust the process completely. One day, the English that feels difficult today will become part of your everyday life, naturally and confidently. Thank you, everybody, for spending this time with us today. We truly hope this conversation helped you feel more motivated, confident, and emotionally stronger about your English journey and speaking goals moving forward, naturally, together, afterward, consistently. And remember, you are not alone in this journey. Millions of learners struggle exactly like you today, but progress always belongs to the people who continue speaking despite fear, mistakes, and discomfort, emotionally, afterward, naturally, and consistently. And you've been listening to the English Journey podcast. Keep learning, keep speaking, and never stop believing in yourself. See you in the next episode.